everybody, Neil here. A little Patreon episode for all of y'all. SEC Power Rankings, man. Let's talk about it. Uh, this is six-man club one, but testing out some YouTube live stream stuff too, because I don't even know how many people actually follow us on that. So I'm just kind of letting it go. But as always, we start at the top. I don't really want to get into the habit of starting at the bottom because I feel like people are less interested in that. Look, Auburn is the overwhelming number one. They're the best team in the country. They won at Tuscaloosa. They really controlled that game. They let it wire to wire. I loved a couple of the possessions when it was tied, like Todd Pettiford confidently making a triple. They come down and get big buckets from Chad Baker-Mazara, who's a guy who I think gives them such an edge defensively, but obviously can be a liability. 2 straight games with a technical foul now. Had one last night against Arkansas, too, for taunting. He's a guy that you worry about a little bit in March if they're in a 1 or 2 possession game. Is he going to cost them, their shot at a national title? But the reality for me, I think it's just very hard to imagine Auburn not making the Final Four. Like, they're just so good at everything. And they can guard you. They score prolifically. They have the best offense in the country. They have probably the National Player of the Year. They deserve to be number one. They're going to stay number one in our power rankings. I would point out that, they also don't have the toughest slate down the stretch, I guess. Compared to some of the other SEC teams, but it's still pretty tough, like Georgia, Ole Miss, Kentucky A&M, Alabama. Somebody asked me about their 3 consecutive home games, and all I'll say is that they were one of the only SEC teams with 3 trips where they were away multiple times this season, so that's just how the schedule broke out. I thought Garth Glissman in the SEC office and all the people at the SEC did a really good job with the schedule, making it pretty balanced and fair. So your number one team for me in the SEC and the country continues to be Auburn. At 2, I have the Gators. Highest they've been in my power rankings to date. Florida's really good, man. Like they can score. They have the best backcourt in America. And then they've gotten just so much better defensively. 86 spot lead from last year, ranked 8th in KenPom defensive efficiency. And when they have Elijah Martin, they are arguably the best defense in the SEC other than Tennessee. We saw that in the first half against Oklahoma when they just suffocated the Sooners as soon as Martin entered the game. Oklahoma scored 15 points with Martin on the floor during the first half, allowed Florida to build the massive 22-point halftime lead, and Florida cruised from there. The Gators are going to get tested. That 1 seed position that they're in right now will be pushed. I think their 3-game close is as tough as anybody's. A&M at Alabama, Ole Miss. But at least 2 of those 3 are at home. Could argue that the game on the 28th at Georgia's a trap game. The Dogs will be desperate. I do not think Florida will have Alex Condon back then, but I wouldn't totally rule it out. We'll know a little more about where Kondo is at media availability tomorrow. But my guess is we will not see Alex Condon for the Gators at Georgia either. And then maybe they'll look to get him back for that March 1st game with the Aggies, which would be huge, as that game will have immense seeding implications. There's an argument to be made that barring an upset loss to Ole Miss, that a win against A&M could almost secure Florida a 1 seed. Rucker Miller thinks it would get them close, so just kind of worth thinking about there. And that assumes, obviously, that Florida beats LSU and Georgia. But if Florida wins their next 3, there are people who think Florida would have a 1 in the NCAA tournament locked up, irregardless of what happens in their final 3 games. We'll see. Could be. My 3 team right now in the SEC is Mizzou. I got them ahead of Tennessee, actually, even though the Vols have beaten Missouri 85-81 in Knoxville. I think that Missouri is playing better than almost anyone in the country. Efficiency and data metrics kind of back that up. Bart Torvik says they've been the most efficient offense in the country since January 14th when they visited Florida and upset the Gators by a point. They can score pretty prolifically. They're good from 2 and from 3, which is how you get top 20 in the country in effective field goal percentage. They make a lot of free throws, get to the line, get fouled a ton. They don't shoot great at the line, but when you get to the line as much as they do, it doesn't matter quite as much. They really stress defenses in a lot of ways. They do shoot a lot of threes, but they make a lot of threes thanks to Caleb Grill. And really, Grill isn't their only guy who can make shots, right? Tamar Bates is shooting 40% out there. And then they have a couple of guys who can stretch. Trent Pierce, 31%. Doesn't sound great, but 25 out of 82, it's something you got to think about as a defense when he's got 25 makes. Jacob Cruz shooting 34%, 29 makes. Marquise Warwick, 43%, 23 makes. So they got a bunch of different guys that can shoot it. And then once they space you out, Mark Mitchell's so good at getting downhill, getting to the free throw line. Just really, really hard to guard them right now. I wish they defended better. I think when it comes time to win 4, 5, 6 in a row, that could be limiting for them, but I like them better than Alabama right now, and I think their win last night proved that. Alabama, I have at 4, ahead of Tennessee as well. It's just upside. Like, they're just so elite on offense. I wrote in my article Saturday Down South today, 10 things I'm absolutely overreacting to, that Bama's ceiling might be the Final Four. It might be like one of these, they can only win 4 more games in a row situation. They would be a historical outlier. Only 3 national champions in the Kim Pom era, dating back to 1997, have not had at least a top 31 defense and a top 21 offense. Alabama's 46 defensively, and they're even worse against quality opponents, according to Torvik. They're 91st in defensive efficiency against the top 50 opposition. That's not great. It's better than they were last year, though, when they won 4 in a row. So I think they clearly can win 4 in a row again. They're so explosive on offense. They stress you. The way they can attack the rim and get twos, the way they can get hot. They've got advantage creators all over the floor. But can they guard well enough to kind of eclipse that ceiling? I got the Vols at 5th. Still high on them. Like, Igor Milicek is really good. And he's come on for them, which I think has helped them rally from that 4-4 start in the league. They've still won 4 of their last 5. Their only loss was at Rupp. Nice win over Vanderbilt the other night. Big game this weekend against Texas A&M. One I'll be watching. 2 teams that are both great at defense, great on the glass. It's kind of a something that's got to give game. I love the ways Kai Ziegler's playing. He's crept into the top 10 players in the country, and Kim Pom should be top 3 in SEC Player of the Year voting, I think, which is fabulous. And then Chaz Lanier, not necessarily an All-American like some projected, but still shooting 40% from beyond the arc, still an explosive offensive player. Gives them a little more, Jordan Gainey gives them a little more offensively than I think they've shown at times. And it's interesting that their offense is up to 30th in Kim Pom efficiency. They were creeping around the 40s for a while. So that offense is improving. That defense is very good. Certainly good enough to win 4 in a row. And then the last team I think good enough to win 4 in a row is A&M. So A&M comes in my power rankings at 6. And I think the Aggies, despite that missed-state loss, have great guards in Phelps and Wade Taylor IV. I love Solomon Washington, what he offers off the bench. Andy Garcia is a dog who you know what you're going to get from them defensively. They rank 5th in Kim Pom total defense. Their bugaboo and what I think could prevent them from winning 4 in a row is that they just still have games where they cannot make shots. They're now 300th in the country in three-point percentage, 296 in effective field goal percentage. And while those numbers are better than last year, and they're still killing you people on the glass, in the NCAA tournament, if they get the raw matchup round 2, you could see them getting suffocated and lose a low-scoring, low-tempo game. A 4-5 for them with like St. John's would be really devastating. It's hard to imagine A&M falling all the way to that seed line and having to deal with that round 2, but that could be problematic. Let's say they're a 3-6 and Clemson is somehow a 6. Another game that could be real problematic just because of Clemson's ability to make shots and like the fact that could really stress Texas A&M and make them score, something they haven't necessarily been able to do consistently this season. But I think right now the Aggies are still firmly on that 2 or top 3 spot. Should be good to get to the second weekend. It's can they win the 2 after that I am curious about. After them, I've got Kentucky still high on the Wildcats. Loved that win over Vanderbilt the other night by 20. Thought it was the first time in a while that we really saw Andrew Carr play within himself and not look like his back was bothering him. I know he only had a couple rebounds, but I love the efficiency, 5 of 8 from the field, his ability to post and score. I thought he played really, really well for them. And then Amari Williams, ruthlessly efficient on Jalen Carey, did not miss a shot that he took. Got 6 rebounds, had 4 blocks. They need that, but to hold Vanderbilt in that offense to 61 is really good. And Otega Owe continues to play like a guy who's going to flirt with first-team All-SEC honors. And they need Lamont Butler back, but to beat a team like Vanderbilt by 21 without Lamont really showed me something. It's testament to how good the SEC is that I have the Cats at 7. At 8, I have Mississippi State, who just had, I think, the best week in the SEC, getting 2 quad 1A victories by beating A&M at home and winning at Ole Miss. Both those teams in quad 1A based on location of those games. Neither game was terribly close. Both double-digit Miss State victories. Miss State led by 19 against Ole Miss before calling off the Dogs. And obviously controlled the game against A&M, winning by 16 in that one. The Aggies led by 5, but then Miss State really suffocated them, holding them to just 25 points in the last 25 minutes. Super impressive stuff. I like that they've got Josh Hubbard, who obviously can go unconscious and really plays within himself. Like, it's amazing that a guy who tries to get in the lane as much as he does at 5'10", who has the ball as much as he does and is that ball dominant, does not turn the ball over. Like, he just doesn't. Like, he is 7.3% in turnover rate. That is top 44 in the country overall. One of the elite numbers in the SEC and the best number in the SEC for a guy who touches it as much as he does, which is on 25% of their possessions. He's spectacular. And then when you get a game like they got from Riley Kugel against Ole Miss, where he's 11 points, 4 steals, 4 rebounds, 4 assists, stat sheet stuffer, right? That's what Riley can be, I think, at this level, if he gets comfortable with that. I think Riley still fancies himself as somebody who's going to go out, score 25 points, and have the ball a lot. And if he just would accept his role, that team's better. But look, this is going to be their 3rd straight NCAA tournament appearance at Miss State. First time that's happened for them since Rick Stansberry. They've got a shot to play on the second weekend. They are that good. And so, super, super impressive dub for them over both Ole Miss and A&M. In my view, sorry about the cough, guys. The next team for me is Ole Miss. I know they've scuffled, I would say, a little bit of late, but they've won, even though they've scuffled, right? Like, they beat LSU by 2. They beat South Carolina by 4. Didn't play great in those games, but won them. Lost that home game to Ole Miss. I really think Saturday and getting off the bye week, Chris Beard is one of the best coaches in America at preparing a team to play. I think they'll make some adjustments and close strong here. They've got Vanderbilt and Auburn away from home, but then come home to play Oklahoma and Tennessee before they have the Herculean task of trying to beat the Gators on senior night for Elijah and Will Richard. But I still like this team, especially if Matt Morrell can pick up his play. He has been hurt all year, but has shown flashes against Kentucky and Auburn and LSU of being like who he's capable of being. I think he needs to take more command. Like, it's your final go-round, Matt. Like, I know you're banged up a little bit, but that needs to be his team, not Sean Padua's team. And if it becomes that, I think the ceiling for Ole Miss is higher than they're at presently. But for me, got to give them that 9 slot. Those 9 teams are all safe and in the NCAA tournament field. The next 4 I want to talk about are all bubble teams: Texas, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Georgia, Oklahoma. Next 5, sorry. I have Vanderbilt at 10, at 17 and 9. I think they're getting close to safe, but obviously, would have loved to have won at Rupp last night, and then they would have certainly been safe. I think a win this weekend over Ole Miss would likely get them very, very close to in for sure, although I don't think a 6-win SEC team is going to get in. I think they'll need 7 league wins, maybe 8, but probably with their quality wins, 7 would get it done. Their final 5, Ole Miss at A&M, Missouri at home, Arkansas at home, at Georgia, are tricky. But if you find 2 W's in there, you feel like with wins over Tennessee and Kentucky and fellow bubble team Texas, that they'll probably be safe. We will see. I have Texas after them. Texas, basically on the virtue of their big-time quality wins. They've got multiple quad 1A dubs in Missouri, Texas A&M, and Kentucky. I think if you have 3 quad 1A victories, you got to feel pretty good on Selection Sunday vis-a-vis the other teams on the bubble. They just had a bye. Need to not slip up at Colonial Life this weekend. Can't take a bad loss. They've avoided them all year. That would be tough. Even though it would be quad 2, the perception of losing to a winless team in the SEC would be bad. 2 huge games, I think, for them coming up. But if they split South Carolina and Arkansas, you feel good about the Longhorns being in the field. I do have the Hogs in that next spot. Sorry, my lights just went out. So, for me, I know Arkansas's lost 2 in a row, but they're playing better basketball. They were very competitive in the games against A&M and Auburn on the road, even though they lost. Those losses won't hurt them. Huge opportunity against Missouri Saturday at Bud Walton. Not a game they should win, but a game they can win. They have played well at home of late. Big time opportunity for them. Win that game, and I think they start appearing in the field, period, in the discussion. Now, it doesn't mean they can't fall out again, but I think that would be the kind of victory that tees them up to be kind of permanently in the conversation as an in team, not a team on the outside looking in. Right now, I have LSU ahead of both Georgia and Oklahoma. I just like the way they're playing. Cam Carter has been spectacular. They've won 2 in a row, including a win over Oklahoma where they negated a 5-point deficit in the final 20 seconds. They rolled South Carolina at home. They're confident. I think they'll give the Gators all they want on Saturday. Cam Carter has been spectacular on both sides of the ball. They have 2 really nice freshmen in the law firm of Miller and Miller, Victorious and Robert, who are playing more and more, and it's given them a little boost defensively. They're 28th in effective field goal percentage defense. Like, their first possession defense is spectacular. They just can't rebound. They're 334th in defensive rebounding. Well, guess what? Like, they're going to guard Florida pretty well, and the Gators haven't been great on the glass without Alex Condon. So we'll see if Florida can use that advantage they've had all year on Saturday. It might be dicey down there for Florida for a while, which could really disrupt Florida's position on the 1 line. I have Georgia ahead of Oklahoma at 14 right now. The Dogs have only won 2 of 10. I think it's going to be 2 of 11 after they lose to Auburn Saturday. And then it just becomes Alamo time. Like, I think they're going to have to beat Florida at home to feel like they should be in the NCAA tournament. So 2 huge games for them against 2 Ken Palm top 5 teams. And then they go away to Texas, away to South Carolina, and close with Vanderbilt at home. The idea was Vanderbilt at home would be like bid securing. Right now, unless they beat Auburn or Florida, that's just not the case. Finally, I have Oklahoma. They've been terrible, y'all. I mean, they've lost 5 straight games. They haven't been competitive in any of them except the LSU game, which they never should have lost. That loss was so crushing because if a 6-win SEC team was going to get in, it was probably them, because they've beaten Louisville, they've beaten Arizona, they've beaten Michigan. 2 of those teams were right on the cusp or in the top 16 seeds overall in the committee's seeding. 2 of those teams are at the top of their leagues. Actually 3 of them are. Louisville's second, third in the ACC. So I just feel like it's desperation time. Like, if Oklahoma can't go 2-0 in this homestand with this state and Kentucky, they're going to be out, and then Gamecocks rounding out the group at last. At this point, it's starting to look like. I know last time I did Power Rankings like a month ago, and I said, no way they go 0-18. Unless they beat Georgia or Arkansas in March at home, or Texas this weekend, they ain't winning. They've got to win one of these last 3 home games, or else they will go 0-18 in the league and join Missouri, who rallied pretty well from that. I don't know if Lamont Harris will rally as well. We will see, y'all. So there's my SEC Power Rankings. Thanks for listening. And, we'll have more on the Patreon this week.